We're moving on to our next speaker from Kickstarter.
Hi, everybody. My name is John DeMatos. I'm the design and tech lead at Kickstarter. I spent a lot of time going to maker fairs, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've been seeing over the last year or so from the maker community on Kickstarter. So this is me. I've backed 615 projects, and this is the fundamental premise of what we do. We provide a platform that allows everybody or anybody to create something to share with other people. It's that simple. That's been the driving force behind what we do for the last 6 years. The maker community and Kickstarter have always been like two communities that have been coming up together. Our CEO, my boss, Yancey Strickler, did a talk at the first New York Maker Fair. Stu and I were just discussing how he introduced him I believe 4 years ago at the New York Maker Fair. So there's been like this really amazing evolution of these two communities together. We have 15 creative categories. I look over the design and tech categories, but we have in total 15 creative categories that span theater, journalism, dance, and we often see a lot of crossover in creativity and best practices from one category to the other. In the last 6 years since we've been around, we've seen 80,000 projects funded to the tune of $1.6 billion. And that comes from 8.2 million backers. 8.2 million people have contributed to a project. And of those, 2.4 million people have backed more than one project. And there's probably about 300,000 people that have backed 10 or more projects as well. It's a very vibrant community that come back and look for interesting new things to be a part of and to help bring to life. We've had backers from nearly every single country on Earth, including Antarctica. Quick overview about how it works, just to bring everybody to the same baseline, and then I'm going to jump into some really interesting examples of cool projects from the maker community that we've been seeing on Kickstarter. So this is what a project looks like. You'll see 3 important numbers there: the number of people that have backed a project, the dollar amount of what has been raised so far, and just underneath it, the goal that it's moving towards and how many days are left in the project. So in this case, this creator has approximately 4 days to raise $1,000, and that's just 25% of the project. Our model is all or nothing funding. If in the previous project the creator did not reach the $5,000, they wouldn't get any of it, and the backers would not be charged any of those funds. It's a very simple, clean premise, and it works. It works really well. It motivates the creator. It creates excitement and a sense of contribution from backers, and it's a very compelling narrative. 40% of projects reach their funding goal, which is an astounding statistic. Of the thousands of projects that we've had on our site, almost half of them succeed. And this is something that I'm particularly proud of in the tech category, specifically, that over 925 projects, closing in on 1,000 projects, have raised more than $100,000. $100,000 is a significant amount of money that can really take you from an idea, a prototype, to being into early production, into being able to share in a modest or increasingly ambitious way your idea and your work with thousands of people. So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in terms of impact on the maker community from individual projects. Well, actually, first, something that we've seen over the last few years: 1 out of every 10 projects at Maker Faire, about 10%, this is from 2014, have been funded on Kickstarter. What I'm going to spend today and tomorrow doing is walking around and talking to our community, reconnecting with our creators, hearing their success stories, hearing about how they're doing, getting feedback from them from what their experience was like, so that we can adjust and really adapt our platform to their needs. And there's a really interesting trajectory and path here from Maker Faire to CES. This was pointed out to me by Tom Igo of the Arduino project. He said, I go to Maker Faire, and then after a couple of years, I see a lot of that same stuff evolve into a cleaner, more sophisticated and ready-to-go mass market product at CES. So, and Eureka Park at CES, which is kind of where all the really interesting stuff is, we see about 25% of the products on the floor that have launched on Kickstarter. And it ranges from things that you've heard of, like Oculus, to things that you'll see here for the first time, and then a year later you'll see at CES. We like to say that every Kickstarter project is a story, because it is, because there's people making it. They went through things to get there. They made decisions. They faced constraints. And we always want folks to tell their stories. So I'm here today to tell you a few of those stories for individual projects that have been on Kickstarter from the maker community. A really good one is the 3Doodler. For those of you not familiar, it's a 3D printing pen. It's an extruder hot tip that's handheld. Interesting for a few different reasons. The first is kind of their origin story. A couple of really great toy designers that had developed this idea, and they went to a couple of traditional toy companies. It sat in drawers for a long time. Nothing happened. Eventually they said, well, we know people want this. We know this is an interesting thing. Let's take it to Kickstarter. And that's kind of the narrative that you've probably heard before. Here's the part that you haven't heard yet. This is a product that plays really well at Maker Faire, a DIY community that can just grab it and start making things. Plays really well at the MoMA store. It's one of the most best-selling items at the MoMA store. And that's the type of thing that for us feels like the most natural thing. DIY, Maker Faire, totally scrappy. At the MoMA, high-end design as well. Also, interesting fact about this team, 12 people. Maybe 13 at this point, but really, a really small team that is shipping hundreds of thousands of units. And recently, they kicked off a really big trend that we're seeing this year of big repeat creators. They launched a second project on our site for the second version of 3Doodler at the beginning of the year. And this one was, again, smaller, more refined, faster than the first version. Effectively using the impact and the momentum from the first campaign to develop and grow their company with the second campaign. This is the Spark. This is one of the Spark projects launched earlier this year as well. Again, a narrative of a repeat creator. They're here in the big room, and the reason that I always bring this up is because they have enabled the creation of a lot of other projects. So because theirs is a platform, an IoT connected chip, they allow people that use their product to develop other projects and develop small little companies and products around it. So you see this tiny little ecosystem developing, and the Spark team, as kind of the leader in that space for their community, establishes best practices, shares ideas about what they did well, what they did that didn't work, and all those things carry through that community. We see it with other communities like Accelerator, which has a booth here, that always launches like a few different projects with us from within their community as well. This is the Choosatron. Jerry Bellich is the creator. He's at the Spark booth. Go talk to him. He's a wonderful dude. It's a little box that like does a choose your own adventure. Then this is the Next Pack. Really interesting project. It's a modular case where you can interchange different modules like an extra flashlight, an extra battery, and it crosses over from an iPhone to like a Samsung Android phone. If you guys remember a few years earlier, there was a really popular video that captured everybody's imagination called Project Ara, like a modular phone of being able to take different modules and swap them in and out. This is kind of an evolution of that idea, and it's kind of the first of what I expect to see many projects like this on Kickstarter and just out in the world. And it seems like a natural fit that this is live on our site, because it captures both the idea that you can make a module for this one day, but also the fact that like this is like very much a part of the future, accompanying projects like the Oculus Rift and Pebble. Kobin, an electric bike, also here. Really somebody who took an idea and used a great part of the ecosystem. You'll see that he worked with companies like Dragon, with BrightHub, with Autodesk, and you'll see that when you look at that, you see that there's a rising ecosystem of companies and services that can help a seasoned entrepreneur really quickly take an idea from scratch to being able to run a Kickstarter campaign to producing it. And we want to make sure that our platform is inclusive enough to bring in and to allow entrepreneurs to really take their ideas and be independent like that. The same way that Kobin is at Maker Faire today, that's the same project that, for example, Miguel from Pancake bought. They can use the same kind of tools to evolve their idea from that first Lego prototype to something that is a product that is on the shelves of stores. 3D printers have always been a huge part of like what's been happening on Kickstarter. This morning I counted over 100 successful 3D printer projects on our site. I am always amazed at this. I'm always amazed that every few weeks there's a new 3D printer project, and it's wildly successful because there's always a group of people that say, this is the one that I wanted. All the other ones, no, this is the one that I wanted. It amazes me. that this continuously happens. And to me, it's the power of like a niche development, of community, of being able to really look at something, take advantage of the infrastructure that's there, and keep developing new and great ideas for your purposes and for the people that really think in the same way that you do. And 3D printers have always been a big part of what we've seen on Kickstarter. Over the last couple of years, that notion of developing tools for people to make has been evolving. So we went from 3D printers to now there's like a growing community of CNC milling machines on our site. The last couple of years, we've seen Carvey from Inventables, a long-established company, launching this machine. And I had an amazing conversation with Zach Kaplan, who's walking around, about Carvey. He said, John, I've always been doing this. I said, no, this is the first machine of this type that you've launched. He said, no. If you look back at the history of his company, he's always been providing tools for people to create new things with. And what Kickstarter actually provides for him is an ability to to launch a new product and to develop a community around it from scratch to something significant with momentum within the course of like 30 or 40 or 50 days. Danielle Appleson was here earlier, so I didn't want to show her machine, I wanted to show her team. She makes a tiny little milling machine called the Other Mill, which is similar in some ways to the Carvey. In some ways, it's more focused towards things like circuit boards. And I wanted to bring them up because they're based out of San Francisco, just up north. They do all their assembly there. This is their team. And being able to you walk through their space and you see the parts are over here, the assembly is over here, the QA is over here, and shipping is over there. That's amazing. That's happening in the US right now. And it's not to me, it's like the most basic thing. We've seen it with MakerBot. We've seen it with Lady Ada in New York. You can definitely like launch amazing products on Kickstarter and do a lot of that manufacturing and assembly in the US on your terms. When you hear people say you have to go to China, the reality is you might need to go to China later on if you're doing things in very, very large numbers, but for the most part, there's a very large array of production, assembly, manufacturing that can suit your project, your idea, your lifestyle, and your value system right here in the US. People are doing it, Danielle and her team are doing it, and they're amazing. So the evolution of that prototyping sphere, you go from 3D printing to milling to now one of the things that I'm paying most attention to right now are a series of projects that I've seen that are really shifting circuit making on the desktop away from the laborious breadboarding to something slicker, faster, and easier to use. So this one is based out of Brooklyn. They're called Bot Factory, but there's also Volterra, which was originally out of Canada, and one of the Shenzhen Hacks projects. Really slick, a lot of the same ideas, being able to make fast circuit sketching on your desktop. And also this team, Cartesian, the same sort of thing, being able to really sketch quick circuits. But it's not just that. Remember 3Doodler from earlier? Just like the 3D printing with like handheld pen? You start to see the same discipline, the same sort of mentality in this space too. So a pen that has conductive ink that you can sketch circuits on paper. These are all the tools that when you line them up one after the other, you get to choose the one that makes most sense to your needs and the way that you work so that you can start to create your own little ideas and projects. And this is a hat that was made by a project that is live right now that is amazing called the Electroloom. So, again, prototyping, but this time for fabric. What it does is it uses an electrolytic process to spin fabric up from materials like nylon. So, and this is where our 15 categories come into play. When you have a category like technology, you get a lot of technology projects. When you have a category like fashion, you're going to get a lot of apparel projects. What lives in between are best practices, ideas, and values that carry over. So you have a Cartesian system that is used for 3D printing, but then you can take it and adapt it and use the same sort of product to develop fabrics. And to these guys, it's the most natural evolution of how they should be thinking. Microcontrollers have always been a very big part of like what's very interesting and popular on our platform. We see small boards, we see big boards. Generally this year, we've been observing a lot of features coming into single boards and the cost being driven down. This is one that's live on our site right now called Udo. A repeat creator from a few years ago, new board. This one includes Linux and Android and Arduino compatibility and the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and sensors. It's amazing, and it's $50. And to me, it really represents the culmination of a lot of things that we're used to, electronics getting cheaper over time, but also a community that's big enough and strong enough to support the creation of these new boards. But we're also seeing, in addition to like big boards that have everything in them, we also see a lot of the same kind of driving forces create smaller, unique, single-purpose boards that are really fun, actually. This is the Makey Go. It's a live project right now. Again, repeat creator, second project from Jay Silver and his team to create like a smaller version of like probably one of the more fun projects that we've ever seen on the site. And I also use the Makey as an example, similar to 3Doodler, of a team that is doing everything on their own terms. They're not letting other people dictate how, like, the production value of their video, for example. If you watch the video of the first Makey project, you will see the most lo-fi thing in the world that just resonates with anybody that watches it. It's just like kids playing with bananas with the Makey. It's amazing. And it's just a couple of minutes. That's all it is. And again, Jay and his team doing everything on their own terms. Small team doing product development, and at this point, Makey is a huge bestseller on Amazon, and we also see it like in stores all around the world and used a lot by education. This is something that we really like to celebrate as Kickstarter, the idea that a small team can do their own thing and be independent without other people kind of dictating the terms. And again, the Makey Go, smaller version, single purpose, very low cost. The Arduboy, also here at Maker Faire. This is a very familiar format for a gaming platform. I think many of us have seen this kind of style before, but it's Arduino compatible. It's kind of like a low-bit, 8-bit thing. And again, it's like $20 or $30. Single purpose, kind of, Kevin, the creator, has this really kind of bigger picture around education starting through a little platform like this. And I wanted to finish on Chip. And it's live on our site right now. It's raised about $1.3 million, and it kind of culminates that notion of like the smaller single-purpose thing. It's raised about $1.3 million, and it has 20 days left to go. And there's clearly something there that's resonated with a lot of people, of being able to buy a bunch of tiny little computers, do a few different kinds of projects. Hey, if it doesn't work, you can toss it out without necessarily investing hundreds of dollars into bigger platforms that you might think later on for an embedded interactive system like a museum type installation. So these are kind of the bigger trends that I'm seeing right now. Besides that, you can always email us at technology@kickstarter.com. I am DeModosJ on Twitter, and I'm open to any questions that you guys have. Yes, sir.
You folks are doing a little bit more incubation style stuff and coaching and trying to just kind of make a smooth on-ramp for people interested in going to Kickstarter. Can you talk about that a little?
Sure. So the question was, I'll talk a little bit more about the incubation and on-ramping services that are being offered right now for projects. It's a natural evolution. We've been around for 6 years at this point. There's an array of services and value-added things in the ecosystem, both that happened before a campaign and happen after a campaign. For example, Accelerator is a group that launched Chip and Arduboy and Electrolume, and they're here at Maker Faire. There's other places like that. Companies like Dragon Systems, who's like a consulting contract manufacturer, does stuff like that. It's really, we feel that they all do good things. We don't necessarily say do this or do that. What we say is do the thing that makes sense for you, your project, and the future that you want to have with it. What I always want to ask creators is, where do you want to be the day after the campaign? Do you want to be in a position where you're making 10 of something, 100 of something, or 1,000 of something? Those are all going to require a different system after the campaign. So, and also you're going to be interfacing, traveling, talking to different kinds of people based on what your needs and wants are. So from our perspective, do what's best for you. We're here to support whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, so like some of the things that are difficult for someone coming out with the first product would be like stuff that's expensive, market research data, market sizing, all this stuff to help you gauge that. Now, since you're Kickstarter and you've got your own numbers, I don't know if you use those numbers to help other Kickstarter people, You've got quite a bit of data, actually.
My perspective is always that every project is going to be very different. Generally speaking, all of our data is mostly public. All of the projects are live and right there.
Yeah.
Anybody can go, like, if, for example, if your project was a Bluetooth speaker,
Right.
I would suggest looking at every single Bluetooth speaker that has launched on our site, successful, unsuccessful, hugely successful, and understanding what they did right and what they did wrong.
Okay, so that's public
We encourage
data.
like a high level of transparency, and yes, there's data, but I'm a big believer in really reading through the comments, the FAQ, and understanding how they tweaked things in a way that made it successful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
The biggest challenge of our generation is probably solving climate. I'm wondering if Kickstarter has an emphasis on, technologies and helping technologies, nature-based ones that would actually reverse climate change.
We definitely have a strong visibility and editorial, we have a great editorial team, let me just start by saying that. And they like to make sure that everything is balanced out on our site, so it's not just, like an Arduino project, or so they tend to look for things that can shine a light on, for example, like civic projects. In some ways, the best that we can do is help promote and showcase projects that are doing really good things for the world, and climate change is definitely something that if somebody has a climate change project, I will come and talk to you, absolutely. Like, that's the thing that we would also like to see. That's it?
John, I have a couple questions. When you think about
Yes, sir.
when you think about Kickstarter, there's kind of two polar opposites that come to my mind. One is this incredible, successful Pebble watch, and the other is the mashed potatoes project. I wonder if you could talk about those two stories in particular, how they came about, and what they mean for something like Kickstarter.
Sure. For us, it's kind of this amazing thing that we can have both of those projects on the same platform, and we feel great about both of them. Eric is a friend. He launched the first Pebble watch with us, then came back for the second one to reconnect with his original community. And the potato salad project was a really fun moment for us, like a really visible, interesting moment of somebody saying, hey, I just want to make a potato salad and share it with the world. And that's the same principle, the same driving principle as somebody saying, I have a smartwatch that I want to share with the world. In some ways, our role is to say, you are both great people, do your thing, we'll support both of these two things, because really what's driving it is a sense of creativity and a sense of sharing with your community.
Can you talk about projects that fail their first campaign and what kind of feedback happens, and if you have an illustration of one that's maybe come back another time and succeeded?
Sure. Our second biggest project was originally a failed project. The Coolest Cooler, which raised somewhere like $13 million, was originally a failed project. From my perspective, you learn so much by doing a project that because the all or nothing model is built in, you can launch the project, and if it doesn't work out, you get to study it and have a relationship with your backers and with like the evolution of that project while it was live to really understand what worked and what didn't, so that the next time you do it, it's a feedback system that loops right in. The outreach team is always available to provide feedback on projects from creators who have an earnest desire to go back and do it again.
Well, thank you very much, John. This
Thank you,
was
guys.
really useful.